My name is Chuck Ligon, alias Papa Chuck. That's what the kids call me. Anyway, I'd like to say why I believe. This story goes back some years ago, and I was inactive at the time. And there was a friend of mine who I knew, his dad had died. We went to his funeral here in the chapel. And when I seen him, I was amazed. He was in a wheelchair, and he looked more like Moses than he did like the old fellow I knew. Was really ill, and I didn't know that. Hadn't seen him for a long time. We sat there through the funeral and all the people talking, and then we went home that night. Wife and I went to bed, and sometime in the middle of the night, dark 30 I call it, something woke me up. And this voice inside my head says, you need to go fly with, we'll call him Dan. You need to go fly model planes with Dan. Because Dan used to fly them, but he was in no shape now to pilot anything, especially an RC model plane. I didn't question the voice, but I said, I don't have a beginner's airplane anymore. And the voice said, yes, you do. Remember that plane your grandson crashed? You can fix the wing. Okay. Well, I don't have a motor for that plane. Yes, you do. Remember that motor that you were given out at the flying field a couple weeks ago? Solder on that wire, it'll work. Okay. Well, I don't have a motor controller for it. Yes, you do. Remember that controller that you won when you were racing pylons? Yeah. You can use that controller. But that's a 50 amp controller, and that's a 5.5 amp motor. It will work. Okay. Do you have a receiver? Yes, you do. That 72 megahertz receiver, that will work. Okay. And this conversation went on for about 20 minutes. So the next morning, I put this combination together. And I took this whole thing over to Dan's house, and I told him the story about the voice, and here's the airplane. And he was sitting there in a wheelchair. I put the transmitter in his lap, and I says, let's go over how to fly again. Right rudder, left rudder, up elevator, down elevator. And we did that for a morning. And then I took him out to this flying field, 5 acre of grass except for one giant oak tree. I took the plane off and got it up in the sky, and then I'd let him fly it. And he remembered enough that he stayed out of trouble most of the time. And when he got into trouble, got too close to the ground, I'd grab the transmitter and save the airplane. And this went on for 2 or 3 flights. And then the airplane wound up in the top of an oak tree, the big oak tree. How do you get a model airplane out of the top of an oak tree? Well, we went home and got his dad's bow and arrow set up and tied fishing line to the arrow, shot it up over the top of the plane, and then you could pull the plane down with the fishing line. And this went on year in and year out for a period of time until there was so many arrows and fishing line caught in the top of this big oak tree that at one time the plane hit the top of the oak tree, and as it bounced down through the tree, it couldn't make it to the bottom because it got wrapped up in all the fishing line that was hanging in the oak tree. But finally Dan moved to a different town, but I still drove over there, and he and I would fly once a week. And this whole story is a story of how God cared enough about one individual who had been studying the church, who had done a lot of things for the Lord, who had been very solid for the Lord, and how the Lord paid him back. We flew 7.5 years that he had joy in flying model airplanes. And I thought, how interesting that the Lord would give him that much joy. And until I had medical issues, we flew planes. So my question to all of you is, when was the last time that you felt so much joy in your life? You felt so happy that your eyes teared up and you just cried for happy. That's the end of my story.